everybody, what is going on? Today we're going to be doing a tier list of the worst PC games and a few others from 2022 to 2023. Currently we're here in May, and man, there are already so many, even just this year. So with that, let's get started. We got 15 titles here. The first we're starting out with is good old Gotham Knights, and man, there's a lot you could say about it. You could say, oh man, the next gen title stuck at 30 FPS, or they took the awesome Batman Arkham games and turned them into stupid looter shooters. But man, you look at this cover art, and maybe you can pull it up on your own computer and see a larger image of it, but you look at this cover art and you know this is a game you don't have to buy. You look at this from the trailers, from the marketing, from the box in GameStop, and you know this is not a game that needs to be purchased. This is not a game that will give you anything. So with all those issues, I think let's start this out at a... We'll start it out at a B, but we'll see where these things have to be moved. Alright, next, Need for Speed Unbound. Console-wise, I think this one did fine, and PC port I think had some issues, but wasn't terrible. The thing is it was just so uninspired. You don't expect anything from a story from Need for Speed, but man was it bad, to the point where on day one, and I followed this advice, people said, go in the settings, turn off dialogue, turn off music. And I did that, and I actually enjoyed the game for a good 8 or so hours, and then after that I was really done with it. If you've seen any comparison videos recently, they compared the AI, the pedestrians, and even just the general graphics in this game to, I think, the Need for Speed reboot in 2015. And besides the stylized nature of this game that kind of looks nice, everything else looked way worse, which was kind of crazy. But the game does function. It's not a good game, but it does function. So in terms of the worst, I think we would have to put it in A for now. Alright, this is the only Nintendo title we have on here, simply because Nintendo makes usually decent games at least, but this one was surprising. So if you can't see it, it's Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot. Now this was delayed, I believe, because of the kind of war in Ukraine was getting hot while this was about to come out last year, and they didn't want this really kid-friendly looking war game coming out during that time, which in hindsight probably wouldn't have mattered at all. But the performance of this game, on top of it being these gross like 3D models instead of the awesome pixel art of the originals on the Game Boy Advance, it doesn't look good and it runs bad somehow. Like, this is a turn-based strategy game. Think of something like Fire Emblem, if you haven't played this before, where you're on a big map, and then when two units battle, it kind of zooms in and you see a little visual of them battling it out. But it's all strategy and tactics. It's not like you're controlling them once they engage in that battle. And if you watch like any of the reviews of this, especially like Digital Foundry, you'll see it struggles to maintain 60 FPS during that, where it's basically just playing a video. There's no gameplay happening, which is insane. I understand it's on the Switch, but like, this could run on like a Samsung Galaxy 2. Like, I don't know why it would have such bad performance, and why it has that kind of bad performance after it was already delayed an entire year. So that's not a huge deal in terms of the other games we have later on this list, but for Nintendo, that's a pretty big L, especially that they've marketed it so hard. So I would put that also in a B tier for now. We might shuffle some of these around later. Alright, next one. This one I have played and I have a lot to say about. Sons of the Forest. If you're a PC gamer, you've probably heard of The Forest, and its sequel, obviously, Sons of the Forest. Survival craft kind of games. You start out on an island, you're shipwrecked, or your plane crashes, or whatever, and you're just gathering stuff. You maybe build a little base, and you go out, and you find caves, and you figure out what the story is and how to get off of the island. The first game was really buggy. Really just not a well-made game, but it was fun. It was a fun game. So, when the trailers came out for the sequel and it looked like graphically looked so much nicer, and you have an AI companion that you can command to do some of the busy work that you might not want to do in these kind of survival craft games, especially if you've played a lot of them. Me and my friend, we bought it, but it's somehow worse than the first game, and not by like a little bit, but by an enormous amount. Now, I think it is still technically early access, and the first game was also early access for like several years after it was released, but there's no story and there's no purpose to anything you're doing. It is a survival craft game, so the biggest thing is building a base. And there's no reason to build a base in this game. They've made it completely unnecessary. So that's the majority of the game. That plus the story. And neither of those matter. Plus the funniest thing, my friend and I played this a couple weeks after it was released, and the devs are adding stuff. They haven't abandoned it by any means, but they added in a motorized unicycle. Now again, we're on an island here, we're stranded on an island, and the whole point of the game is getting from place to place, from your base to the cave, to this item, to this marker on the map. This motorized unicycle can travel at like Mach 5. You can go up sheer cliff faces, sheer mountains. You can get to the top of the highest mountain in the game on this thing within minutes, like maybe 2 minutes. You can fall off of it from any height and not take damage. We found it accidentally in some camp. It wasn't even like a special quest item, and it ruined the entire game for us because there's no item you could find that would be better than this random unicycle you found in a camp. So we had a lot of fun with that. We were doing drifts and sick jumps off the highest mountains in the game, and then after that we're just like, yeah, we're done with this. So it's really disappointing, and from how the first game went, I know they'll fix some things, but I know that when they come out with their quote-unquote 1.0 release or final release, it's still not going to be finished. So that might be more on me for expecting something that they didn't deliver in the first game, but I'm going to put that in C for now because they really marketed it like it was like this next-gen thing. The graphics are nice. You can turn the graphics up to the highest settings, but it runs poorly. There's no story, and there's no purpose to anything you're doing because there's no real progression. So that's where I would put Sons of the Forest for now. This one should be quick. Next one is Madden 23. I only have two things to say about this. One, we know it's the same game. Like, how many videos have we seen online where they, it's Madden 19, and if you look in the background, you can still see banners that say Madden 17. Or it's Madden 23, and you can still see banners that say Madden 20. It is literally the same game. They update the roster, maybe add 1 or 2 new mechanics that don't mess with their code, and they call it good. We know that that's bad already, but the thing is that they have the audacity to take this known shitty product and slap a dead man, slap John Madden himself on it, and call it a new game. Like, that's just, what does that say for their respect to his legacy? That's just nasty to me. So we're gonna put that at, it's gotta be our first D, because like it's not like they tried to make a game and failed. It's they took a game someone else already made like 7 years ago and failed to update it properly. So that's a D tier for sure. All right. Next one we're looking at is Horizon Call of the Mountain. Now this is a PSVR 2 title, and only for PSVR 2. It's not on PSVR 1 or any other VR software on PC or anything like that. This was their launch title. This was their marquee AAA, come check out PSVR 2, what it can do, and have your socks blown into next week. And man, was it boring. There were some bugs here. It was not that bad in terms of bugs or in terms of playability. 90% of the game was like climbing in first person, which was like vomit inducing almost. And the remainder where you actually got to do combat was decently fun, but it was so little of the game. Like, I spent more time in the game like picking up objects and just tossing them at NPCs or in the air or off cliffs than I did actually fighting in this third person action game. Now I know here it's first person, but it's based on a third person action game, so you would suspect if you were to buy it that it would contain some action. from the very cover we can see here, it's a person with a bow and arrow, and you see enemy in the background, a flying enemy to shoot at. And there just wasn't much of anything to it. It was mostly climbing. It's like if you took like 1 or 2 early sections of Half-Life Alyx out of that game and then just made a slightly longer game based on those like traversal and movement sections and puzzles. It's like if you made a whole game based on Half-Life Alyx's puzzles that no one likes. Like, it's cool that you can do it and it's novel, but after a couple hours, no one wants to be doing that. So let's put that at a, I'm saying a B right now. Let's go B for that. Alright, now we're getting into some of the juicy ones here with Forspoken. Now, on PC, this one was completely screwed. On PS5, it was slightly better. Again, if you watch the Digital Foundry reviews for either the PC or the console port, this game has a lot of problems, and it's not just story or gameplay. Like, things down to the lighting engine, the loading are just so messed up with this game. So this is a tough one because the game functions, but it does have a lot of inherent issues, and also it's boring and also has a bad story. So I'm thinking a C for this one here. We're gonna shuffle all these around once we get to the end of it. Next one is probably gonna be one of the most interesting ones. Jedi Survivor. If you haven't heard by now, the PC version of this is completely bungled. Was just destroyed. Everything from memory leaks to not getting anything above 20 or 30 FPS on basically any system, and going in and changing graphical settings from maximum to medium to low to high to anything in between, turning FSR on, turning any of the NVIDIA processing techniques, DLS 2 or 3, none of it did anything. None of it changed. You'd get the same frame rate regardless of what settings you put it at. I think they have since patched it now, both on console and PC, to perform a bit better. If you do intend on playing this game and don't have it yet, you're looking at a console version. You're not going to get the PC version. But the fact that Respawn, such a good company and owned by such a large company, EA, can't put out a game that functions on PC. I don't understand why they can't either delay it further, because they've already delayed the game, I think, several times. It was originally supposed to come out in March, and I think even before then there was a delay. But why not just put the console version out and delay the PC version? I don't know why companies can't seem to get this, and I'm sure it's not the devs' fault necessarily. It might be the higher ups, but you can't have your game not function on PC. You can't. This isn't early access. The game should either work or it shouldn't. So while the game itself is good, I think I'm gonna have it's either B or C. I'm thinking we'll put it C for now and see where it ends up after the shuffle. All right, moving on to Wild Hearts. For some reason, I searched for like 5 minutes. I could not find a JPEG of this that was just the art and not a PS5 case. It was all WebP files, which infuriated me. Moving on from that though. This game was also completely messed up on PC. Console port was okay, but even then there were a ton of graphical issues that seemed to just be part of the game, like really bad textures, shadows not working properly. But they haven't fixed those since then, so I think that's just the game. And it looks like, honestly, a late PS3 game. Like something that it would be coming out alongside like Uncharted 3 or The Last of Us or something like that. And it honestly looks worse than both of those games. So, not sure about that. Again, gameplay decent, okay, but completely broken PC version and really lackluster console version in terms of performance and graphics, which is just strange because, as we said, it doesn't look very good. So, and I think it did not do very well. EA tried their hand at Monster Hunter and it didn't seem to go over too well. Let's put this also at C for now. Next, Dark Tide. If you're not I don't know if this is on Game Pass on console or if it's just on PC, but this may be a PC only title if I'm correct. And ooh boy, number one, it did not run well on launch. You could not download it very well on launch because it's through Game Pass, and the Game Pass app on PC is, let's just say, not good. But it came out, lots of bugs, lots of issues, hard to even download, very little content, and a lot of the things that were shown or that were promised were not in the game. And while those were not necessarily an issue, the gameplay was still good, and you'll find lots of people that praise the gunplay in this game. But the performance, while it does have pretty good graphics, they were so bad. Even with a 4090, you turn every feature on, everything maxed out, you're going to struggle to get a little bit above 60 FPS at like 1440p. And that's just like, for a $1,600 graphics card, that is not acceptable. Graphics card prices have ballooned like 3x what they were a couple generations ago, and they're getting worse performance than those cards did then, which is crazy. It shows you how unoptimized these games are, and this game especially, as well as many others, are over-relying on DLSS 2, 3, and AMD's versions, FSR. Excuse me, but this game, they focused on... They got the gameplay right, okay? They screwed those things up that we mentioned, but the thing that really drove the nail in for a lot of people that I saw was, while those things were broken and they weren't fixing them, they were updating and constantly editing and changing and fixing the cash shop in the game, where you can buy items with real money, and that really made a lot of people upset. So I hope this game gets a second chance, but looking at the Steam charts for users, it's probably not. I think it's already down to like 4,000 to 5,000 average users when it peaked at like 100, nearly 110,000. So it's really disappointing because I don't think they have the player base anymore to do much more with it. Sure, they might add another map or another class or something here and there, do the constant DLC stream that they did for Vermintide 2, which is also made by them. I think the developer is Fat Shark, if I'm not mistaken. But it could have just been so much better. That's I'm gonna put it in C because the gameplay is good, but man, it could have been so much better. All right, next is Last of Us Part 1, specifically the PC port. And you've seen the memes of the messed up graphics. You've seen the memes of it using like 20 to 24 gigabytes of VRAM. You've seen 4090 struggling to run it. I think they fixed it to a degree, but I'm putting this one alongside all these in the C tier simply because these companies, when these issues come out, they deny it or they act like they didn't know about it. Like, did you not test the game? You are the game developer. Did you not develop it? Like, what is going on? That same thing with Jedi Survivor. Respawn is an excellent developer, and I'm sure, due to budget cuts or due to certain things, that they might not be developing or testing a lot of things in-house. The thing that we traditionally think of as game testers might be something that's outsourced or, who knows what. But, like, you're developing the game and you're developing the game on PC. Like, these people, even if you're making a console exclusive, the game's made on PC. But they don't know if it runs on PC properly. Like, that's incredibly insane. So either the deadlines they're getting from the higher ups are, like, crazy too early, or they're just not doing their due diligence. I don't know what it is. But just for Naughty Dog, like, saying that stuff and acting like, oh, a portion of our players are experiencing this minor issue when it's, like, actually a pretty big portion, I think they've got most of it ironed out by now. So I guess I'll bump it up to B, but I'm still not happy with their response or Respawn's response or a lot of these companies' response. Next one will be short. It's Tactics Ogre Reborn. It is a JRPG strategy style game like Final Fantasy Tactics. The only reason this is in here, when you're playing a game like this, like Fire Emblem, like these games where you can level up and do missions, change your classes and stuff, half of the fun of it is over leveling or like going glass cannon mode or doing something that makes your character unique and overpowered. what they do in this game that is not in the original is after a certain point before you go to the next mission, you can't level up anymore. They cap you, which means everything about it being role playing is gone. It becomes like this linear role playing game, which is like so strange for what it used to be. Like the cool part about this game was over leveling, grinding things out, going to the next thing, just trashing everyone, doing stuff like that. So I don't know why they changed that specifically. Otherwise, the game is good and the changes they made are good, but like that one little change took away so much of the fun of it being a role-playing game. Like everyone knows you grind in role-playing games. You get stronger, something's difficult, you come back to it at a higher level. But at a certain point, you can't get to a higher level unless you go to the next thing. Just kind of a strange design choice. Don't know why they did that, but otherwise the game is good, does function, not any bugs or stupid issues. So we'll put that in A tier. Final 3 here. Saints Row. I wouldn't be against you. I wouldn't call you out if you forgot this game existed or came out at all. This was such a small blip on the radar, and it's so sad because the franchise really needed something. Like Saints Row, you remember Saints Row 2? That was better than any Grand Theft Auto game up until that point. Fight me about that. Saints Row, but since then it's been going down. Saints Row 3, cool, but got kind of wacky and kind of cartoony. Saints Row 4 was basically just a superhero game. And this is somehow worse than that. Bad dialogue, terrible bugs. I wonder, so this is one of those games, as most games do these days, that have an $80, $90, $100 special edition that comes with the season pass that nobody knows what's in it yet. I wonder if that stuff will even come out for this game. Because I feel like just no one cares. Maybe you'll be able to pick this game up for, $20 with all of the DLC and everything in a couple months, but the effort they put into it was just so sad. I don't know what they were thinking with this. At least it's not a big, huge AAA dev that poured millions and millions into this, but this was still a big project. So, not sure what their plan was. It performed bad on everything, had bugs on everything, bad shooting, bad gameplay, bad story, bad dialogue. Like there's nothing about the game that wasn't bad, but it was at least kind of funny to watch people play it. I think that's gotta be a D tier. Because the bar was so low, right? After Saints Row 3 and 4 and Get Out of Hell and all that stuff, which aren't necessarily bad, but they're not Saints Row. They just took it in a completely wrong direction and didn't really understand what Saints Row was. But I don't think it's the original devs anyway, so you can't really blame them for that. Right, this might be the most interesting one and the most timely one. Redfall. This was Xbox's premier game for 2023 until Starfield comes out later in November, if it doesn't get delayed again. This game is terrible. You can find a dozen video essays right now from all your favorite YouTubers about why this game is bad, why it's mediocre, why it's sad, why it's disappointing. Xbox needed a win with this game because they have nothing coming out. They just have nothing until Starfield. I don't know if their new Forza game will come out this year, but it was this and Starfield, and just maybe some indies thrown in there. And it was just bad. Performance terrible on console and PC. Before this game released, they had to announce that even on console, their most powerful console, Xbox Series X, that would be limited to 30 FPS. You think, well, it's kind of strange because the game's not very graphically demanding in terms of looks. There's not tons of AI on the screen or tons of things going on in terms of physics or powers or anything like that. So you think that's kind of curious. And when the game comes out and you see the performance also on PC, you understand why. This game was not done. It was not finished in any way, shape, or form. So you go and watch a video of how the AI acts in this game. You'll be embarrassed for them, even if you know nothing about coding or developing games. You'll be embarrassed for them. And it's even stranger because obviously they got Xbox funding, but it's Arcane Studios. Now it's not, I don't think it's the main Arcane Studios, which is probably why we're looking at this situation. But Arcane Studios known for Dishonored, great game, Dishonored 2, pretty pretty dang good game. Prey, great game. Deathloop, I don't know what was going on with there. But I don't know why they're doing this with another offshoot in Arcane, because it just ruins their name. The people that made Dishonored, Prey, you would see that in a trailer, that would mean something. Now it's the people that made Dishonored and Redfall, and that means stay away from it. So in just like a year and a half, 2 years, they've trashed their reputation. So I hope the main studio gets to make a game here soon, although they're under Xbox now, and man, after Dishonored, or excuse me, after Deathloop and Redfall, if their next thing isn't a banger, man, Arcane might be gone. So that's disappointing. I hope they can get it together, but this is easy D tier because this was supposed to be their premier title, and it does not work. There's no story. There's no cutscenes even. It's just like slideshows. It's just baffling. Like it's not even like, oh man, we all knew this game would be bad. It's so funny. Everyone kind of thought it would be not good, or maybe like a 5, 6, 7 out of 10, just average. But it's just strange. And finally, the last one on this list, Dead Island 2. This game was in development hell between 3 separate studios for not over a decade, a little under a decade. I think the game was supposed to, I don't remember if the trailer for this initially came out in 2014 or if it was supposed to, the game itself, come out in 2014, but it's changed hands a few times since then. But the crazy thing is, the game runs flawlessly on PC and console, and it's not just stuck at 30 FPS like a few other games. It is what it is. It is a Dead Island game. I think if I would compare it to the first game, which I played on Xbox 360, Dead Island 2 is clearly a better game. But I'll be honest, it did not hold my interest enough to complete it, even though it's a fairly short game. Like, I think most reviewers said between 15 and 25 hours, depending on the side content and all that fun stuff. But the game was good. It ran flawlessly. It did not have any, third-party, Denuvo or anything. It didn't have terrible, frame rate issues or memory leaks or anything like most of these other games. Like, can you imagine this Dead Island 2 gone through the hands of 3 developers, maybe restarted several times, performs better than The Last of Us Part 1 made by Naughty Dog? They have a TV show out for their game. Now, I know Naughty Dog didn't do all the work for the PC port, and their PlayStation version of the game runs fine. But the fact that they have oversight over it, like, they had to confirm the game first before it went out, before it went gold, before it was ready to be sold, and they said it was okay. The same for EA and Respawn with Jedi Survivor, the same with Xbox and Arcane with Redfall. And it's just crazy that this AA budget game, now I know it costs $70, and no one in their right mind should be paying $70 for Dead Island 2. But in terms of performance, which is what we're gauging most of this on, it's again mostly PC stuff, we're struggling these days with AAA games on PC. And Dead Island 2 just so happens to be better than all of these, at least when it comes to performance, at least when it comes to frame rate, and actually functioning properly and not destroying what previous iterations or previous games in the series or previous games by the developer built up. It is an improvement over Dead Island 1, and it runs well. So what else can you ask for Dead Island? So that's why I'm going to give it an S. Again, this is not in terms of the most fun game. This list is not in terms of the objectively best game in every regard. This is more focused on performance, more focused on frame rate, more focused on bugs, more focused on the developers and how they're acting and treating their customers. Their customers who are paying not only crazy amounts of money this generation for hardware, but also now paying $70 for new games that are broken on PC. Let's look at the list one last time before we go and see if there's anything we want to change. Dead Island is definitely staying up top there. Tactics Ogre you could really put anywhere, but I think I'll leave it here. Need for Speed, man. Oh, it's tough. Because it runs well, it runs fine, but it's just so much. It's nothing. It's so phoned in. I don't know. Last of Us, I'm locking in The Last of Us there, locking in Horizon, locking in Advance Wars. Gotham Knights, I want to put it at D just to be spiteful, but I'm actually going to bump it down to a C, honestly. I'm bumping it down to a C, and I'm bumping Jedi Survivor up to a B, even with what I said about EA and Respawn and how they should have reacted to the situation. I think otherwise, though, this is our list. I think this is the list we are sticking to. And again, thank you for watching, and feel free to let me know what other games should be on this list, whether PC ports, because man, when I was looking, I had like 8 or 9 games in mind, and I found some of the rest of these. Like, I forgot The Last of Us port came out on PC. I forgot Forspoken existed. I forgot about most of these games, honestly, especially Saints Row, which we mentioned. So, sound off in the comments any other games you want to see on this list, or how you would tier these games. This tier list is up on tiermaker.com. If you check out the old handle here from Ancient Flames, _Ancient Flames, and then _, you can do the same tier list yourself. So, until next time, have a good one.